This is Studio 809.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, where there's links to my social media, or other podcasts, my photography website. Please visit that and see if there's anything there that you'd like to purchase and hang up in your house or give us a gift or something along those lines. Also, you can support this podcast at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob, and you can help support this podcast and pay the bills and maybe look around right now with, upgrade with some better equipment and all that kind of good stuff. All that stuff you can do there. And also you can leave me an email if you have like a question, a comment, a suggestion for the podcast, and also sign up for my weekly newsletter. So all that is at hikingbob.com. Today, joining me after a several week absence while I had a number of interview guests on the podcast is my co-host, Wild Westendorf. Hey, Kevin.
Hey everyone, it feels great to be back. It feels like it's been longer than a few weeks. Yeah, you can find me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and on my website, wildwestendorf.wordpress.com. Just so you know, in a couple weeks, I will have my own domain back. I'm not sure if I'm still going to stay with WordPress or if I'm going to move, but I am in discussion with that with a friend who knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, great, Kevin. So you and I have a lot of catching up to do. We've had a couple weeks, like I said, of interviews. If you had a chance to go back and listen to those, we had one with one of my favorite people, the healthy hiker, Alicia Philly. We talked about feet, how to take care of your feet, how to recognize foot pain and what it means, how to get the right hiking footwear, whether you're like me and you like boots, and if you're like me and you need ankle support, what kind of boots to look up for, or trail shoes or whatever. We had a great conversation there. Then there was one with Luis Benitez, who's actually the first head of the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office in Colorado. He's now moved on to the Trust for Public Land in his book about how outdoor recreation can save the world. And that was a really, really fun podcast. Anytime you think you're the smartest person in the world, or at least the smartest person in the room, sit down with Luis and you'll remember that he probably is a lot smarter than you are, certainly a lot smarter than me. We had a great conversation. And the most recent one we did was with Jolie Nesmith, who is the newest, I should say newest, she's been there for more than a year, or about a year, the executive director, Rocky Mountain Field Institute. So a couple of really great podcast interviews that we've done, and we're always looking for more good ones. So if you have somebody you want us to talk to, we certainly like to do that. I have a book coming in the mail that looked really interesting, and I think that after looking at that book, I might be interviewing the author of that book, and so that'd be one to look for coming up in the next month or so. So a lot of stuff going on. Always want to hear from people and see if you have suggestions or comments on things we can talk about or questions you might have on the podcast. So Kevin, since we haven't talked to you in a while, and when people, when we last talked and people, who follow you and follow me and follow the podcast would know that you suddenly, just before the end of the year last year, you got laid off from your job, along with a bunch of other people. We can talk about why that happened, but really it doesn't matter. And you've been in a quest to find a job that is best fitting your skills and stuff like that. And you just announced by the time people read this, it'll probably be almost a week ago, or by the time people listen to this, probably be about a week now. But you got a new job, and by the time this airs, had started your new job. So you want to tell us what it is?
Yes, we're recording this on Sunday, so I will be starting this job on Monday. This podcast episode will air on Wednesday, so hopefully at that time I still have a job.
If not, you'll probably set a record for how fast you can be in and out of a job, and I know you're not going to do that.
But yeah, the last 3.5 months with my job and my health and all that, it's been a little bit of chaos. So I got a job at the Independence Center. It's a nonprofit. It's something I feel really, really good about. It's within the same type of work that I've been doing for the past 7.5 years. So I feel really, really good about it. I'm definitely excited. I went through 3 interviews with a total of 6 people. So I definitely have talked to a lot of people, and I feel really, really good about each one that I've talked to. It is definitely, I think the right word is like it. The right word is finally. I'm finally like it just feels good like I finally have a job. I am very, very excited about it. Like I said, I feel good about the job and the people. I was very, very glad that when I got the job offer, they didn't want me to start the next day. I was very, very glad that they said we want you to start on Monday because I got a job offer on Wednesday, just so I could kind of like have time to relax and have a few days to where I don't have to worry about the job search. I can kind of just calm down and breathe. It feels really, really good to just breathe. And like I've said, I don't harbor any ill will or bad feelings towards my former job. I get it, stuff happens. It just feels good to just kind of relax for a few days. And right now, I'm just kind of just like I made sure I had my laundry done. I made sure I had all my errands done. Just kind of like, okay, I can wake up tomorrow at 6:30 or 7 and start my new chapter.
So tell us what the Independence Center does.
So they advocate a lot for adults with disabilities, and the job that I will have will be the first point of contact with that. So anyone who comes into the building or calls us, I'll be the first one that they talk to in terms of finding out, hey, I have a disability or I have an issue with this or that. I'll be the one that they first talk to in terms of, oh, I know of a program or service that is available for you. I also know a possible grant that might be available for you. So that's my main thing. I am gonna learn a lot in the next month. Because I found out that their onboarding process is 3 to 4 weeks long. So I'm just gonna learn a lot.
So this is basically like somebody has a disability and they're looking for a specific service for something they need, that this is where they go and you help them line them up with the right people to help them get whatever it is they're looking for to help with their disability?
Yes, yes. And
Awesome.
what helped with that was I already did a part of that with my last job because a lot of people who are seeking food at the food bank are also needing or in need of other help. So I think that really helped in my interviews. I think that helped make a good impression because it was also just, oh yeah, I've got a lot of experience in this in terms of someone who is seeking food is also saying, hey, I also need help with this other thing. Do you know anything? And just by that nature, I had to learn and know that stuff.
Well, that sounds great, and it sounds like a perfect fit for you. So I'm really happy that you got it. Congratulations on the job. Please, by Wednesday, still have the job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm kidding. I can't imagine that there's no way you won't. I can't imagine you won't have a job. You're gonna be fine. This is a great fit for you, and smart of them to find you and give you a position there. I think that that's a great move for them, along with being a great move for you too. So this is perfect. Well, congrats on that. I know it's got to be a huge load off of you to have that out of your to-do list every morning, probably
Yeah,
find a job.
I don't wish to job search upon anyone because it's a constant, it's repetitive, it's tedious in terms of like because when you want a job, you want to make sure your resume and cover letter is tied to that job you want. So when you have to adjust that constantly for each and every job, like yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a full-time job to look for a job. So I'm very, very, very glad to, for now, as far as I know, to be past that point.
Good for you. Well, that's great. I'm glad for you. So you'll have to keep us informed as things go on, how that's working out for you. But I can't imagine how you're not going to be great in that position. I think it's just going to be wonderful for you. In other news, as I like to say, I'm still down in Arizona. By the time this airs, we're going to have only a few days left. Been down here since the third week in February. Other than flying home, I had to fly back twice, the beginning of March and the beginning of April for meetings that I had to attend in Colorado Springs. The beauty of it is Southwest makes it very easy to fly directly from Colorado Springs to Phoenix and back, and does it for a really reasonable rate. So I was able to fly home, get an Uber home, go to a meeting the next morning, get on a plane that afternoon, fly right back, be gone for 24 hours. So been able to do that kind of stuff. But what we're doing now is wrapping up our time here in Phoenix because, to be honest with you, it's getting hot. Like Kevin said, we're recording this on Sunday, the Sunday before it airs, and I was out hiking today and it was in the mid 90s. And I would have had to get up very early in the morning to beat the heat. Even by 9 o'clock, it was already in the mid 80s. It was getting hot fast. So that's been a trend here, which seems to pretty much happen every time we do this trip, which we typically do every year. And we're down here till about the beginning of May. So a few days after you hear this, we're going to be on the road, headed back to Colorado Springs, where it'll be chilly again, more like spring weather, not this hot summer weather that we're already experiencing down here in the desert. But it's been a tremendous trip, been a tremendous stay down here, gone to a lot of places. I've been trying to make a point of going to places and hiking on trails and doing things I hadn't done before, which has really been a lot of fun. And with this last week, I have a few more of those things that I want to do. But in any case, it's been a pretty good trip, and that is winding down, and I'm looking forward to getting back. I'll be home for like a whole month, and then I'm heading on another trip in June. So, but anyway, wrapping this trip down to Phoenix, a couple of months in the desert where it's warm and colorful, wrapping that up here pretty soon. But as I'm recording this right now, it's about 6:30 Colorado time. It's still 94 degrees. I don't know how. I still don't know how people. I don't know how people who want to do outdoor recreation, I should be clear on that, can stay here all year round, other than getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go for a hike, and how they do it, because it just gets broiling hot pretty quickly. Probably the one main thing keeping me from moving down here year round. But I love the desert. Other than that, the other part of it is too is, of course, in another month, all this colorful stuff I'm seeing here, the wildflowers that are blooming, the cactus that are blooming, in another month, that's all going to be gone, and the rest of the year is going to be pretty brown until late November when the fall colors kick in. So it kind of, I'm spoiled by the fact that I'm here probably the most colorful times of the year for the Arizona, the valley, the Central Valley. And then after that, it kind of like goes away. So besides, it's hot, and then it kind of turns brown because of the heat and everything dries up. It kind of loses the lure. So I'm never sure if this is where I'd want to stay year round, but I do enjoy being here when I'm here. Colorado's still home. Kevin, I got to get you down here one time when I'm down here so you and I can go do some hiking. I did have some friends come down about a month ago, and they were just planning on being here, so everything kind of crossed. They were here at the same time. We went and did some photography together for a couple of days, and that was a lot of fun. But I need to have you come down here when I'm down here, and we can do some hiking together and do some hiking in the desert, which is entirely different than hiking in Colorado.
Oh yeah, yeah, because I really enjoy hiking in the desert outside of Vegas, where I'm from, but there's like I see your posts and your photos and stuff, and it's just there's a lot of hiking in Phoenix, outside of Phoenix, that looks amazing. So yeah, I am all for that. I like the desert. I'm from there, so of course I'm just like, bring me the heat and stuff, but especially because from your photos alone, like the hiking outside of Phoenix looks amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It is a lot of fun. It's a different environment. I don't know how best to describe it. It's one of the things you have to experience. I think what surprises a lot of people, like I posted a picture to this little waterfall that I was on a trail, and I went up to Payson. Now Payson is outside of the valley. It's up in the mountains. You're past, you don't see the saguaro cactuses. You're above the saguaro cactuses. It's about 75 miles from Phoenix. So you're up in the mountains, and took us pictures of this beautiful waterfall that I shot some pictures of. I had somebody remark, "Oh, you don't think of the waterfalls for Arizona?" Well, people think of Arizona as being the Central Valley from north of Phoenix, the area like Black Canyon and stuff, south all the way through to Yuma and down to Tucson, and and all the way down to the border. But forget that a good chunk of the state is mountains and higher elevation, and places like Flagstaff and Prescott, even Sedona, are higher in elevation and experience snow and have rivers and creeks and waterfalls and stuff like that. But we're always focused so much on what it's like down here, that, which, I mean, makes a big chunk of the state, but there's a lot of it that's also much of it. It's like Colorado. Everybody who hasn't been to Colorado thinks we all live at 10,000 feet next to a ski slope and have a ski lift next to our house to take us up to the ski slope, not knowing that half of the state is actually flat land, and the lowest elevation of the state is below 4,000 feet. I think it actually might even be lower than that. So, you know, a lot of people don't know that half of Colorado, literally half of Colorado, is flat plains and ranch land and farmland and things like that. So, you know, everybody has these preconceived notions about what different places are like, and you come out here. And then with that, of course, people also think that the desert is sand dunes and dry and parched and very dull looking, but you come here in the spring, and I was out hiking over the weekend, and more of the cactuses are blooming, and they're one type of cactus, the cholla cactus, for example. One of those bushes could have red flowers. The bush next to it, which is the same cactus, could have yellow flowers, and then one a half an acre away could have orange flowers. They're all the same cactus, they just have different color flowers on them. So the desert can be very colorful, but it doesn't last very long. By the time it ends, we're just barely starting to see flowers bloom in color, which is what I love about Colorado. And then the flower season in Colorado lasts from June through September. So we have months and months of it, where here you have weeks of it. So it's a whole different environment. And there are things down here that you just, obviously you don't see. You don't see all these different types of cactus. You definitely don't see saguaros. And they only grow even in a small part of Arizona, so you don't see saguaros or anything like that. So it's different. And I appreciate having the ability to see different environments. And it's been a good trip for me. So I always try, even though it's easy to get into a rut, especially when you're down here for months. You know, you kind of get into a routine. I always have to remind myself, you're only here for a certain period of time, and try to treat it like I'm here for 1 week. We used to come down just for a week. We tried to squeeze in as much as possible. And I try to do that when I'm down here. I'm only down here for a little while, and I need to go do things I haven't done before, and just try to keep finding newer things to do. So it's kind of fun. But anyway, someday, Kevin, when I'm down here, you got to come down here. We can go do some hiking together. You're welcome to come down here when you want, but I'm pretty sure if you called me and said, I want to go down in June, I'll probably do my best to talk you out of it. And say, you don't want to fry your brain down in there and just cook yourself in that kind of god-awful heat. So.
Oh yeah, I've got experience and memories, very, very vivid memories of being in Las Vegas in February, and I was sweating.
Yeah.
So I'm fully aware of Phoenix and the desert in that part of the country in the Southwest. But yeah, I've had layovers at the Phoenix airport, but I haven't actually spent time in Phoenix. I've only spent time, like really spent time in Flagstaff and Sedona.
Both of which are pretty cool. Flagstaff is kind of nice because it's around 7,000 feet, so it's a lot like being in Colorado Springs. They have 4 seasons. They get a lot of snow. I know we come down here Christmas and then Thanksgiving and stuff like that. We have to be careful on our trip home because we have to go up through Flagstaff, and I-40 through the northern part of Arizona is at a pretty high elevation, and snow is actually an issue up there. And sometimes we've had to delay our trips or leave early just to get ahead of or behind weather that's occurring up there at that elevation. So it's not all desert. A lot of it is mountains and forest and things we used to see in Arizona, in Colorado. So, Kevin, let's move on to the next topic. And I know it's one that we talk about a lot, and I talked about it a lot in my most recent newsletter, but it's people behaving badly. And I know that it's a thing, and sometimes people roll their eyes when we say we're going to talk about that, but there was an incident that occurred at Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Now, some places refer to it as a national park. It's not, but it is managed by the National Park Service. But in any case, what these couple of knuckleheads were doing, they were on a trail, and they were filmed, videoed, and this is, Lake Mead is near Las Vegas. They were videoed pushing over rock formations, red rock formations, acting like a couple of jerks. And I think the only person there with any iota of common sense was a little girl there, or a young girl, I should say little girl, who was apparently the daughter of one of these knuckleheads doing this, who was yelling at them about doing it. But, I guess, and it created a lot of outrage. I know that the Park Service law enforcement is trying to find these guys. This is kind of reminiscent of an issue that occurred in Utah some years ago, about 5 years ago maybe. That was in a state park where some Boy Scout leaders of all things were knocking stuff over. And, they were eventually caught by Utah authorities and fined heavily for that, and I think banned. I hope that happens to these guys. I don't know what is wrong with people. And it created a lot of outrage. And I said some pretty harsh things on my Facebook post about it. And nobody told me that I was wrong for being so harsh. So I guess I'm not alone. I expected one person to tell me I was probably exaggerating my outrage, but I wasn't. And I think everybody's pretty much on board with how this is just stupid behavior. I don't know what the problem with people. What makes you think that this is a smart thing to do? And what would possess you to do it, to go ahead and knock stuff over like that? And I don't understand it. So more people behaving badly, Kevin.
And it's frustrating because I remember when the Boy Scout leaders years ago in Utah, they justified what they did, saying like we felt it was a dangerous rock formation, or they knocked it down to prevent any chance of the rock falling on people. It's
Yeah, because in a million years it was there, that never happened. So of course it was going to happen tomorrow. So the jerks had to do that. Yeah, nobody bought it.
Yeah, and what's frustrating is, especially with the recent one at Lake Mead, people who are doing stuff that they know they're not supposed to do, but they get some kind of joy from it. And you can tell them, oh, no, that's bad, but they don't understand the level of what they're actually doing. I feel like there's a better way to say that, but it's really frustrating because, yes, what you are doing is bad. It's destroying landscapes. It's not improving safety, or it's not an improvement for anyone involved. And it's
just an improvement for their misplaced sense of entitlement that they can go do whatever the hell they want.
yeah.
I don't know what possesses people to do stupid things like this. There was another case, slightly different from this, but not a whole lot. A place in North Carolina that this happened over the weekend or late last week, where near this apartment complex, there were some bear cubs seen hanging in a tree. And they're apparently close to the ground. And people who lived in the apartment complex went over there and plucked their bear cubs out of the trees so that their friends could take selfies with them. Fortunately, Mama Bear was nowhere to be seen, or this could have ended up really ugly. And you and I know, Kevin, the bears really don't want anything to do with you. They'll try to stay away from you. Apparently, these bear cubs were traumatized. They found one in a creek bed nearby. DNR went and got that one. The other one they haven't found. Nobody knows where the mama bear is. Lots of people recorded it. By the way, everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's going to catch you doing something stupid. So what the hell? So they were caught doing this stuff. DNR, or their equivalent, Wildlife Service or whatever in North Carolina, apparently has found these people who live in this apartment complex. They've had at least words with them about it. I'm hoping fines are to follow. But I guess people have lost the ability to just leave things alone. And I don't know why we seem to have to remind people to just leave things alone. Besides the fact that it's not yours to mess with. It's just, you're probably breaking a law. And it's, these rules are there to protect animals and features and whatever else is out there. And it's just not ours to go do with what you want. And if I sound like I'm getting on my high horse about it, you know what? I am, because it just pisses me off.
I totally agree, because I have seen this stuff too. Not seeing someone like knocking down a rock and stuff, but I have seen people just not respecting the outdoors, and it's frustrating. It is extremely frustrating. I think it's totally okay and fine to be on a high horse about it, but for me, it's the lack of understanding that these actions don't have a consequence. That's what's frustrating and makes me mad, upset, especially just I get mad when I see parents. I've seen this where I've seen parents just allow their kids to do stuff like that. And I could go on a whole rant about this, but it's just I wish even parents would tell the kids, hey, we don't do this, we don't move things, we don't touch things, blah blah blah. Because that's I think as a parent, you should instill a respect for nature. And I think some of that lack of respect is because for some reason that is just not a common thing that is taught.
When you have parents that are self-entitled jerks, you're going to have kids that become self-entitled jerks.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is what happens. I once, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, I was volunteering in North Cheyenne Canyon Park at Helen Hunt Falls. We had just created the Trail Ambassador program there, and I was at Helen Hunt Falls and volunteering that day. And I'm up on the bridge, so people who know the falls knows that bridge that goes across the creek. And I look down, and there's a kid trying to climb up the rock face where the falls are.
Mm.
So I run down there and have him get off the rocks, and I'm a little upset. And his parents look at me and goes, "Why are you upset?" I said, "I don't know, why is your kid climbing up the rocks?" He goes, "Well, who says he can't?" And I said, "Well, the sign that you pass says you're not allowed
Oh,
to do
yeah.
that, number one. And number two," and I literally said this, and I'm surprised I didn't get in trouble. I literally said, "And how stupid do you have to be to think this is a good idea?" And they said, "Well, you don't need to be rude about it." I said, "You don't need to be a jerk who thinks this is a good idea and you're standing here watching it." I was not the least bit upset about, I was a volunteer, what are you gonna do, fire me? Which, by the way, they didn't. And it was like,
Good.
it's like, what makes you think this is a smart idea to do something that stupid and dangerous? No gear. You just, mom and dad are sitting there thinking, "Oh, look at our dumb kid climbing up the rocks." I'm like, you're all stupid. The only thing I didn't have the authority to do was throw them out of the park, which, trust me, I wish I did. Let's remember that these things there are rules in place for reasons. I can tell you from my work with all these different parks departments and stuff like that, they don't create rules just because they're sitting there looking for something to do. These rules are there to protect resources and to protect the public and to protect the wildlife. And if you just respect those, you're going to be just fine. And when you do something stupid, most of the time, and Kevin, you and I have talked about this, although an accident can happen to anybody, no matter how well trained and prepared and equipped they are. And we've seen that happen before, rock slips out. Most of the time, when something happens to somebody, it's because they are unprepared, unequipped, untrained, or doing something illegal. That's most of the time. That's probably 98% of the incidents that occur are people doing something they're not supposed to do. If you're doing something, if you're abiding by the leave no trace principles, if you're carrying the 10 essentials, if you're following the rules for whatever open space or whatever land you're on, your chances of getting injured, lost, in trouble for violating a rule go down dramatically. I'm never going to say that not going to happen. Go down dramatically than if you're doing something you're not supposed to do, or don't have the proper equipment, don't have the proper training, and haven't done the proper planning. It's just, that's the way it is. And I can go back and look through years of reports on rescue operations and tell you that most of those are going to be because people did something they weren't supposed to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't have the knowledge and wisdom that you do, but I also know most of the time that I've heard about a certain rescue operation or someone getting hurt, injured. It's just they're doing stuff that they're not supposed to do.
Kevin, you got plenty of knowledge and wisdom. You can meet me anytime. Plenty there. Anyway, so enough of that. Next topic. Let's talk about one more thing here, a couple more things actually. So there was something else we had here. One of the big summer events here in Colorado Springs, which was a big fundraiser for our friends at the Trails Open Space Coalition, was the Starlight Spectacular. And this started many years ago, and it started as a bike ride through Colorado Springs. It used to start at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Then they moved back to midnight. It used to draw 1,000, 1,500, 1,200 people, lots of people, more than 1,000 people. We'd start at Garden of the Gods, go through, kind of skirt around downtown, come back up. Lots of people on bikes, and just it was fun. It was at night, bikes lit up, families, individuals. It wasn't a race. It was just you paid a fee, and then was a big fundraiser for Trails and Open Space Coalition. COVID came, they had to suspend it for a couple years. They brought it back, and then they moved it to where it was completely within the Garden of the Gods, which I thought was another great idea, and that worked out really well. Well, unfortunately, they announced last week that they are not going to do it anymore. Definitely not this year, and probably for the foreseeable future. And there's a number of reasons for it. A, their numbers dropped. There was another big bike event called Ride the Rockies, which was a huge bike event. Now that was more like I shouldn't say it was a race, but it was another big bike event that took like a week, went all through Colorado. That has been suspended because the number of people participating has gone way down. Same thing with the Starlight Spectacular. I think last year they only had 700 people, where they used to have more than 1,000. And 300 people, for example, makes a big difference when they're paying a fee to go in there, versus when you compare that to the cost of doing it, permitting, barricades. When I used to go through Colorado Springs, I had to go through town, down Garden of the Gods Road, down, touching by the Parks Department headquarters, through downtown, back up Colorado Avenue. It was, a lot of police protection you had to pay for, and that's a lot of money. So they moved it within the Garden of the Gods, which was less expensive because then it required a permit. They would announce that the gates would close to the garden early. They would close the gates. A lot less expensive, but still fees that had to be paid, and you still needed some police protection there, not nearly as much as you used to, obviously. Basically just a couple cops at each entrance just to keep people from driving through, even though there's gates, all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, attendance dropped, cost went up, and they have decided they're not going to do it. I'm personally very sad to see that happen, and I sent the executive director, Susan Davies, a meme of a girl crying over it. And a lot of people are sad about it, but I think a lot of people understand. I hope that they bring it back in the future in some form. Besides just being obviously a major fundraiser for them, it was just a lot of fun. You'd go out there at midnight and people would be riding around, and if you timed it, like sometimes just luck of timing, you'd be out there and the full moon would be rising over the Garden of the Gods while you're doing it over the city. It was beautiful. Just a good time. You get to see people you probably hadn't seen in a year since the last time you did it. For me, it's one of the few times in a year I'd actually take my bike down off the ceiling of the garage and go for a ride, and usually spend half a day inflating the tires, getting everything lined up, lubing the chain, and make sure it all works, and making sure I remember how to ride a bike, because I do it so infrequently and do all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately this year it's not going to happen. I hope they bring it back, because it is a lot of fun. But I do understand, how these things happen. Did you ever participate in it? I don't know if you ever did.
I did not, and that's why when I saw the news, I was very, very sad, because it's been on my list for years, especially because I am determined that this year I will get a bike. Especially what's nice about the new job that I've got is bikeable. So I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a bike. I'm gonna get good at it. I'm gonna learn how to be a bicyclist with the laws and the street laws and all that and the rules. I was really, really excited about that. And I remember one of my main points of thought was the Starlight Spectacular. I finally get to do that. And then I found out it's not going to be a thing. So I'm bummed out about that. I wish I took advantage of it before, but like you said, I get it too. I get why it was canceled. It's just a bummer though. It's a bummer. Yeah.
One of the fun parts about that too was every year they came out with a new T-shirt, and they would have a contest and come up with a T-shirt design, or they get artists to submit designs, and they pick one. I have a pile of T-shirts over the years for that. So if nothing else, I'm going to miss getting a new T-shirt every year. There were some years where I couldn't make it. I would sign up just so I can get a T-shirt, just because I wanted that T-shirt. So unfortunately, the Starlight Spectacular is no more. I'm hoping they find a way to bring it back in future years. I'm very sad that it's not going to happen again. I always look forward to it. I have to find another reason to bring my bike down. I'm not a cyclist. I used to cycle a whole lot more, but On the other hand, as my feet get tired, I might have to I might have to cycle more as my feet get a little more worn out. So anyway, Kevin, I kind of hinted at the beginning. In June, I'm going to take a trip to North Carolina for a week. I'm going to be taking pictures of waterfalls and doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, so my trip to North Carolina is coming up in June, where I'll be taking pictures of waterfalls. I can't wait to do that one. Speaking of waterfalls and that kind of thing, Hanging Lake here in Colorado. And I'll post a link in the show notes, but it was in my newsletter this past week. So if you go to my website, you can look at the last newsletter. There's a large project that's going to be going on at Hanging Lake, where they're going to be rebuilding the trail. That starts the beginning of May, and it's going to go through, clear through into the fall. So what's going to happen there? Hey, Hanging Lake, Kevin, you've been there. I'm pretty sure you've been there. I've been there a couple of times, a number of times. There's a couple of things with it. A, it's hard to get to because it's on I-70 in Glenwood Canyon, which is an engineering marvel if you've never driven I-70 through Glenwood Canyon. But you can only get it going in one direction. So you would have to go past it. If you're going, I'm trying to remember which way this worked. If you're going westbound, you'd have to go past it, hit the next exit, come back, and get off going eastbound. I think I have that right.
Yeah, because if you're going eastbound, that's the way to get in.
Right. So if you're going westbound, you had to go past it, get off the next exit, turn around, go back. Very limited parking. As it became more and more popular, tell me if this sounds familiar because it's happening all over the place. Parking became more difficult. It actually got to the point where there were fistfights breaking out over parking spaces. People were backed up onto the interstate, which gave State Patrol all kinds of fits, rightfully so. So they've done a couple things over the last few years. They established during the summer months limited parking. You had to reserve a parking space, or you had to park in Glenwood Springs and reserve a shuttle ride over there, which, trust me, was just worth doing it that way. My personal opinion is Glenwood Canyon and that trail is actually better done like in September when the fall colors are changing. But nonetheless, very popular place. Well, now they're going to be working on it, reboot, because they had a flood incident there a couple years ago. It did a lot of damage to the trail. They got grants. The U.S. Forest Service got grants from the state, from GOCO, Great Outdoors Colorado, lottery money, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They're going to be redoing the trail. The trail is going to be closed Monday through Friday, clear through the fall. When they're actually replacing some bridges on the trail, it's actually going to even be closed some weekends. So you're going to have to, there's going to be no parking there. You're going to have to make reservations to get a shuttle there from Glenwood Springs. I will have a link in the show notes. Plus, go back to my newsletter. Go to my website, click on newsletters. You can find it. Go back there, look at it. There's an article. I wrote a thing in there with a link to the news release from the Forest Service. But if you want to do Hanging Lake, my best suggestion is if you live here in Colorado and it's not a one-time deal for you, wait till next year. If you're traveling here and want to do it, you really need to, if you want to do it during a weekday, not going to happen. If you want to do it a weekend, it might happen. So you're going to have to just pay attention to what's going on there. More than likely, you're not going to have the opportunity to go do Hanging Lake, at least at your leisure, I should say, until fall. And even then, of course, it depends on how the summer goes, how much rain we get, and we get any flooding, we get any bad weather, we have a fire, anything like that happens, could, of course, alter the chain of events and how things occur there. But Hanging Lake's pretty important for people to keep an eye on. I love the place. I think it's gorgeous. I actually think, my personal opinion is, the hike up to it is prettier than the lake itself. This is my opinion. The lake is kind of cool, but the hike up there is gorgeous. Deep in this canyon, switchbacks, a creek runs through there. I actually like the hike up there better than I like the lake. I'll probably get people email me, tell me I'm crazy. That's okay. That's not anything new. So anyway, that's happening. And one last thing, Kevin. As some of you who've listened to this know, I was scheduled to do a trip to Iceland in May of 25, next May. And I got a phone call from National Geographic last week saying, hey, week before last actually, saying, wanted to let you know that your trip is on, but the itinerary has been canceled. Like, I don't know what that means. He goes, well, we're going to do something different. We're going to send you an email. We're going to let you know, but you're still on for the trip, but it's going to be different. I'm like, okay. What does that mean? It was a 5-day trip I was taking. It was not all the way around the entire island. It was going to be part of the island. So I got the new itinerary last week, and they've actually made that from a 5-day trip to an 8-day trip. Now, typically that would cost more, but since I'd already signed up for the 5-day, they're actually giving it to me for the same price. It's going to happen at the same time, but now it goes all the way around the island, and there are more excursions onto the island, from the ship onto the island, where we'll be visiting some waterfalls, some lakes, the puffins, which are a bird. You would know a puffin if I showed you a picture, say, oh yeah, that's a puffin. If not, Google puffins, you'll see what I'm talking about. So the plus side is I get a longer trip for the same price. And now, of course, if you're signing up for this first, you're going to pay whatever the going rate is. This is because I signed up earlier. And I'll spend, for me as a photographer, I'm going to have more opportunities to take pictures. So dates aren't firm yet. They said we're not going to have those firmed up for another several months, but I had to call them and say, this is what I want to do. And they were just fine with that. So my trip to Iceland is actually going to be even better than anticipated. So kind of looking forward to that. I'm pretty excited about that trip. And the closer I get, it's still a year away, but the closer I get to it, the more excited I get about it. And it should be a lot of fun. So I'm just thinking of the picture opportunities for there. And it's going to be one of those, like when I went to the Galapagos, once in a lifetime. I don't think I'll get another chance to go. So I'm going to take this chance to go when I can.
Nice.
I've never seen anybody who went to Iceland and said, yeah, it was boring. I haven't heard that yet. So.
And Iceland is, sorry, I had a brain fart. I was thinking of New Zealand, but Iceland, yeah, that's
I wouldn't
north.
mind doing New Zealand either, but
Yeah.
no, Iceland is the North Atlantic.
Okay, cool.
Iceland and Greenland, it's interesting. The running theory is that the Vikings knew that Greenland was pretty Arctic and pretty flat, and I should say flat, but frozen over most of the time. Iceland is very beautiful. They named them the opposite so that people go to the wrong one.
And I actually
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the theory. It's like, we'll name the ugly one Greenland. Everybody will go there. We're going to go to the one that doesn't sound pretty, but it actually is.
right, yeah. I actually found out that the Appalachian Mountains or Appalachians, I've been told by so many people who are from the South that no, it's pronounced Appalachian. No, it's pronounced Appalachian, but regardless, that mountain range, they actually have discovered remnants of that mountain range in Iceland. I did know for a long time that mountain range was at one point much higher than the Rocky Mountains. And the reason they're so low now is just because they're so old. So it's just over time with erosion and all that. But they actually go that far north, which is cool. It's a cool little fact. Yeah.
Yeah, with the continental plates, if you look at a map, you can see where everything was actually one big landmass and they drifted apart. Yeah, one way you can tell, this is going to be pretty arcane stuff, but one way you can tell the age of mountains is look at their shape. So when you look out here at the Rockies and they're very triangular shaped, very sawtooth shaped, those are younger mountains than like the Appalachians, which is the way I pronounce it when I live back east, which are more rounded. So if that happens over age, as they get eroded by wind and weather, the older mountains get more rounded, get worn down, while the newer ones are still very steep and sawtooth shaped. Those are newer and they're still very pointy. They haven't been eroded. Of course, this happened over millions and millions and millions of years. So that's how one way you could tell why the Appalachians are more rolling hills kind of looking. And I spent some when I lived on the East Coast and the Blue Ridge Mountains and all those in that area, where here they're very pointy and sharp and still very rocky. So kind of the same, kind of how you can tell, I guess.
It's how I first learned about that was because the mountains on the eastern edge of Colorado are more rounded, but then you go to the San Juans, which are much more jagged. And apparently it's because the San Juans are much younger.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the like Cresto Needle and that whole ridge there, like Westcliff and stuff, they're very pointy. Not nearly as rounded as if you come a little further east. So yeah, that's exactly it. There's your geology lesson for today.
Yep.
By a couple of really amateur geologist. I by no means claim to be any type of geologist at all, and I don't think Kevin, you do either.
Same here. Yeah, yeah.
Just just what little information we have. Kevin, I didn't have anything else on our list. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about today? Any updates? Anything you got planned coming up anytime soon?
Just with the job and things looking up with my health, I am very, very excited to kind of feel like I'm getting back on my feet and I can like look forward to making plans for some trips upcoming with hiking. I am currently house sitting and this is not relevant, but I'm experiencing my friend's dog just made a smell that is not very good. So I am
I hope there's no remnants from that smell on the carpet there or anything.
so I am looking forward to this podcast ending so I can leave this room.
I was wondering why your eyes were watering.
Oh man, I am ooh, this is something else. Ooh, okay.
All right, with that, we better go before Kevin gags to death. Kevin, nice to see you again. We'll have you back on again soon. We do have some interviews in the works, but we'll have you back on soon. And everybody, thanks for listening to the Outdoors Like and Bob podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
We'll talk to you later.
See you, everybody.